Three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. As always, I'm Ash. Welcome back to the show. If this is your first time, you're wondering what the heck you're doing here, I'm guessing it's because you like comics. You're probably searching comics on YouTube. Maybe you got recommended by somewhere else. I don't know, but thanks for stopping by and checking it out. My channel is about some schmo, that's me, who likes comics, just like you, talking about comics. And today, I'm going to talk about a comic called Ascender. Absolutely in love with this comic. And the trade paperback just recently came out, I think a couple weeks ago. And it's like $10. Now, if you're a person who is okay with buying $10 comics, it's 80 pages, I'll pay $10. Or, this is 136 pages. And it's one of the best comics I'm reading right now, bar none. It's gorgeous, although I have to admit the art didn't grab me at first. I'll talk about that in a minute. I believe the MSRP is $10, so you're not getting a super deal off Amazon. However, they will. In my area, it has Amazon Prime one-day shipping. But if you can get it at your local comic book store for the same price, more power to you. That'd be great. Support your local comic book store. And you're like, wait a second, Ash, I didn't even commit to buy this book. Now look, if you are a Descender fan, if you read Descender, then you probably don't need this video. I've read the first issue of Descender, and I only read it after I got this book. And I didn't really know anything about Descender. I kind of missed the boat on it. I wanted to check it out. I decided, hey, there's this new series coming out called Ascender. I picked it up. I read the first issue. I did a video on that. And if you're really more curious about detail of that book, please check. That's a great video to check out. It will spoil the first book to you, but it really covers my thoughts about why I'm so enamored with this book and the stories. Now, I set the book down and I didn't read it right away when the following issues were coming out. I just kept buying them, but I didn't keep reading them, which some of you may go, oh, that's a red flag. It's not as good as you're saying because you didn't jump right. I get that. Now, the problem I was having was I decided, well, at the time, because I do a YouTube channel, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I got this great idea. I'm going to go to my comic book store. I'm going to buy the back issues of Descender because they had every single issue of Descender that I could, and I was like, every week I go to the comic book store or whatever, or when every issue of Descender comes out, I'll just buy the next issue of Descender. And then what I'll do is I'll read Descender issue 1, then I'll read Descender issue 1, and keep going, boom, boom, boom. Now I was actually able to read Descender because Comixology had it on Unlimited, and I used to have Comixology Unlimited. I put that on pause. So that's another story. But I do recommend Comixology Unlimited, by the way. And you can read a lot of Descender there. So I read the first issue, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this book, besides being so great, is you don't need to be a fan of Descender. You don't ever have to have read a single issue of Descender to follow along. Jeff Lemire has crafted a masterpiece. So far, it feels like one. It's the way that it's written, the art. This is 100% 5-star comic book material. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how it all ends because every story you can have the greatest story in the world and if you drop the ball in the ending, it can ruin it all. But I'm having some faith. Anyways, so I started reading this book, and I was immediately captivated by the story and this character you see on the cover here of this little girl, Mila. Now, the art didn't grab me at first because I'm sitting here thinking I'm getting a sci-fi fantasy story, and it's all painted watercolors, and the color palette is that postmodern thing that I hate, where they use pinks and teals and oranges. It's a very effeminate color palette, and it's, in some cases, it's used to, let's just say, for for promoting an agenda, rather than for any artistic reasons. But here, I don't get that at all. Here, I just feel like this was just a style choice. And now that I've seen Dustin Nguyen's art in other places, I have to say that this is my favorite examples of his work, that I most preferred to me. And the more I've read it, the more the art really grew on me and felt like it belonged with this book. It gave that book its own visual style, its own feel. Because the one thing that I compare about this book is Star Wars. And I don't say that lightly. And I don't mean Disney Star Wars. I mean George Lucas original trilogy Star Wars. I don't know if Lemire is a massive Star Wars fan or if he's just a big fan of The Hero's Journey from Joseph, I think it's Joseph Campbell, who Lucas was a student of. I don't know. But I can tell you this. When I read this book, and I mentioned this in my review of the first issue, this is the Star Wars I wish we would have gotten. This character, Mila, is the Rey that should have been. She's not a Mary Sue. She's a real character that you can believe in. She's got personality quirks and flaws, and you care about her. She's sometimes a little bit insufferable because I believe she's approximately 10-ish. I don't know if they ever say her age, but I'm going to guess like a 10-year-old girl. And 10-year-old girls can be that way. And to Lemire's credit, he doesn't write her as, the one of the stereotypes, the cliches that I hate is when it's like the perfect kid, the fictional kids that always seem to just be like, hey, I do everything perfect. No, kids are insufferable because they're kids. Like they make mistakes, and that realism or those things about the character add to the realism and the believability of who she is, and it makes you care about her because she's not insufferable in the way like every panel you can't stand her. It's just enough to make you go, oh yeah, this is a real kid. But she's also got strong character quirks that make you cheer for her. And she's precocious, and she's curious. All these qualities that, if you're an adult, if you have children, if you have nieces and nephews, I don't know, you can look and you can kind of understand it. It's one of these qualities that are endearing. Now, she's got this father who's kind of beaten down, older, he's been through a lot. He's a hardened guy. And sometimes he takes that out on her, as you can see in the scene here, see a flashback of the mother. And I cover this all. This is the first issue. You can watch that video. I don't want to delay this video because it's probably going to be long as it is. So I'll go here into the second issue. Here's the cover. I don't actually have the trade paperback because I'm buying the issues physically. But I got the digitals for backups, and so I can show you with a review purpose. Going back to Star Wars. Star Wars is a major impact in my life. I'm old enough to have seen all the Star Wars films in theaters when they originally debuted. And it is one of my first childhood memories that I can recall actually is Star Wars. Seeing it at a drive-through with my father. And I can't remember much. I can just remember a couple like flashes. Mostly I remember stormtroopers that for whatever reason stuck into my childhood brain. But my formative years, they made a great impact. And later on, as I became a fan of fiction and writing and a wannabe writer myself and everything, Lucas became sort of my mentor, the person that I looked up to and who I wanted to be like, and I wanted to write like. Star Wars was my model, and I was always perplexed at why no one else seemed to be able to do what Lucas did with these films. And I always just wrote it off as like, well, this is just the best that there is. Lucas just achieved the top of the mountain and other people just weren't able to climb as high. So be it. There's always going to be something that you hold as in the highest regard and everything else falls short of it. Star Wars may not be that to you. It just is to me. Now, later on, when Lucas went back and he did his prequel stories, I cannot tell you the level of hype. I probably have never been more hyped about something in my life than I was for those because of my fandom. And, those movies fell short. I look back at them fondly and I still enjoy them as a Star Wars fan because, they are Star Wars, but they don't have that level of perfection. I don't hold them at the same esteem as the original trilogy. They're flawed films, and Lucas was indulgent. There's a number of reasons I don't want to talk about here in this video. That's not the point of it. But the whole point of talking about Star Wars is some of the things that he did. And it's also one of those things that everyone's seen Star Wars, so I can use it as an example, and you're not going to be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, Ash. If you're a comic book fan and you haven't seen Star Wars, you're just, I don't know, you're a unicorn, I guess. But what I loved, one of the things that Lucas did I thought was so cool about in the original trilogy is he jumped into the middle of the story. He starts off with episode 4. Now, it wasn't really episode 4. It was a fictitious episode 4. But what Lucas was trying to achieve was this sense of like, there was already a story that was happening before this, and you're jumping in the middle of it. It was such to the point that he actually wrote outlines for the prequels. He didn't really write them out in detail, but just, an outline of what would have happened in these prequels had they ever been made, simply to add a feeling of history to his story. And when you watch Star Wars, you can see it. You can see it in the subtleties. When Luke Skywalker's talking to Ben Kenobi at his little hut, and Kenobi's talking about the Clone Wars and his father being the best star pilot in the galaxy, and there's a real sense of history in this world. It feels lived in, and it feels like it wasn't just created at that moment, And I, as a child, and growing up even as an adult, always just was fascinated, and it sparked my imagination about what existed before. And that's, of course, why one of the reasons I got so hyped about the prequels as well, and also part of the reasons I got let down. Never meet your heroes, that old saying. One of the things that Ascender is doing here that I'm loving is it's achieving the same thing. It's starting off this world that is lived in. It has a history. It actually, in this case, it's chronologically, it has the story of Descender that happened before it. Now, December is the next month. Descender was a story that happened 10 years previous to this. And one of the characters was Mia's father, although he was young. And like Star Wars, it serves kind of as a prequel. So when I'm reading this story of Ascender, I get the same notes. I get the same feeling of like, wow, there were things that happened before, and I want to know about them. And that is why my long-winded approach, why I was hesitant to read this book, because I kept debating with myself back and forth. Should I do this? Should I read Descender? Should I not read Descender? Because I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and I kind of want to enjoy Ascender without having it be spoiled by the events of what I'll call the prequel, Descender. Because I don't know the history of the father here, right? I know that he was in the book because this book talks about it and tells about the story. So I know some of the things. I know some of the characters you see in here because I've seen some of the covers of the Descender books. I know that they're in the books, but it's done in this kind of the same way the Star Wars was. It's not a direct sequel with the same characters, right? In the Star Wars prequels, the story was about Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi and the characters that were before Luke, Han, and Leia, right? And there was some crossover, like Ben Kenobi kind of crosses over and has connective tissue. Same thing here. And I love that. And I'm like, I should really read Ascender and not read Descender. And that'll make it all the more wondrous. And I'll discover things, because I feel like if I read Descender, then I'm gonna see things and go, oh yeah. Now, part of this book is, and I'm not really reading it, I'm showing you, and going forward, we're probably going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory. I urge you not to be spoiled. This is a dip out moment for you if you're like, I should check this out. And you really should. When I did pick this up last week, I was like, you know what? I need to start reading this book. And because I had just made a decision. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to read Descender. I'm just going to start reading this and just go. I'm not going to do the one. Like that's what I was really debating. And I couldn't make up my mind. I'm very much an indecisive person. So that was why I wasn't reading the book. It had nothing to do with the quality. I picked up issue 2 and I stayed up into the wee hours of the night, because I picked it up at like 2 a.m. Like I'm a late night owl anyway. So I was, probably going to go to bed soon. I was like, I'll read an issue. I could not put it down. I read all the way up to issue 6, which is the current issue. And then I was, oh my, dang it, I can't read the next issue. Each issue leaves you hanging with wanting to know more. That is the sign of a great plot. That's what a plot is. A series of events that serve a narrative to define a conflict and let you see, how it gets resolved. This book has a strong plot. It's not necessarily a deep plot. It's not, it's not one of these, how do I say it? It's not like a Jonathan Hickman level. It's not a brain buster or anything like that. This is like Star Wars, a simple story of heroes. And they're in a futuristic sci-fi world. It's actually a fantasy world. It's a space fantasy. And these characters, like, adventure is thrust upon them. They don't go out seeking to save the world or whatever. Things happen. And here I am showing you some scenes. This is a very touching scene where Mila has to kill this monster creature. And, as the dad's fighting it, and she comes in at the last minute and saves the day. And, of course, that's a traumatic thing for a little child. And the touching moment of the dad hugging the kid. I want to put into words what this book does for me. And the only way I know how to do that is to make comparison of things that others can relate to. You look at this cover here, it's got look at the space dragon. It's, so far, the story is a great touching tale of a father-daughter relationship. Like I said, you got the precocious child, who I'm predicting will probably end up being a hero-type character of the story. They're already having wondrous adventures, meeting crazy, eclectic characters, just like in Star Wars. There's so many throwbacks to that trilogy, and some of the great things, you got like the scoundrel character with Han Solo, and how great that was when he went to Mos Eisley. All that flavor that Lucas threw in, besides the great hero story that those films had, all that flavor of that world, it made you just want to soak it up and learn so much more. It made you want to read probably other books and comics and absorb everything you could. That's what this book kind of does the same too. And Lemire, oh man, I'm really going through some spoiler. I'm just flipping through pages here so you can kind of get a look at some of the art. But I'm not going to tell you anything. So if you are a person who still wants to not be spoiled, you can definitely do so. Read the books and have so many reveals and great character moments. I know that I'm not super eloquent. So you're like, I don't even sometimes know why I do like a YouTube channel, because it doesn't behoove me in a way, especially when I'm by myself. I feel like I do really well when I'm partner up with someone. But get this book. If you like sci-fi fantasy at all, if you're a person who's like, well, I don't really care about it, but I did like Star Wars, try this. $10. $10. You get the first 5 issues of this book, and you get a story about a great villain who was very Emperor Palpatine. God, I can't pronounce. Palpatine-esque. You get this great adventure story. The character's traversing, having to make a journey, having to meet people along the way to help them. There's a great moment that's like right here where they get to this boat, and it's like the daughter's like, which one is it again? This one, the starfish. This is it. They get on board. I thought you said we were going to find a ship, Dad. I mean a real starship, not this piece of garbage. Better be careful, Mila. If the captain of the ship hears you talking like that, she'll throw you overboard. She was a great pilot and a great soldier. You don't want to mess with her, kid. Trust me. And it just what it did is it harkened back to that scene, when Luke sees the Millennium Falcon for the first time. He's like, what a piece of junk, and Han Solo kind of gets a little insulted, but without being a carbon copy of it, right? It feels like an homage, but in a great way that doesn't feel like a ripoff. So these characters, they have their story. There's a villain that you're learning the motives of and what they're trying to do. And this is a world where science and technology have sort of been destroyed. It's a futuristic sci-fi world, but brought back to the Stone Age almost, if you will. Well, not the Stone Age, but robots are not allowed. No scientific intelligence or anything like that. You can have basic machines like boats. Actually, even starships are kind of outlawed. Like, everything is magic. And they have these dragons. They can travel on these beasts. And this mother is sort of like the... Ooh, that was a big spoiler. The mother is the sort of pinnacle. She's like the most powerful magic being in the galaxy, which is why she can rule. There's a lot to her. The world building sucks you in, and the characters are endearing, and you just want to know more about them and follow their adventures. And I think I'm going to end this here. I don't want to flip through too much of the book. Yeah, there's issue 6 is the next issue, which will be in the next story arc. I know that my video has been all over the place. This isn't normally kind of the videos that I do. I usually just pick a book and a single comic and talk about it. And comics like 20 pages is easy. This, with being so large and trying to keep it within 30 minutes or less, was very difficult. But I just wanted to get my opinions out there, get my thoughts, because we live in a world today where comics are a dying breed. And if you're a comic fan, there's a good chance you are one of those people who are like, oh, comics are dying, all this stuff is crap. And I understand that. I also understand that if you're into superheroes and stuff, that's what I am. I'm into the big two, DC and Marvel. The reason I love comics is I like superheroes. I like, more importantly, the connected, shared universe of a superhero universe, which is why I don't pick up like indie superhero books typically. I don't care about, a story of the singular super. Like, I want to read about a world, and I can pick up, a Batman book, and then Superman exists, and I can pick up Justice League, and all this stuff's all connected. But I also do like sci-fi, and I like some fantasy. I like some other genres, so I do pick up some indies here and there. And some of the indies have some great stuff. Usagi Yojimbo is an indie that I've been buying since the 80s. This is an indie today that is worth your attention, unless you're just absolutely abhor everything that I've talked about. If everything I've said you're like, that just sounds terrible, Ash, well, I don't know why you've made it this far in the video. But if any of it sounds halfway interesting, I'm telling you, the writing in this book is among the best of anything that I'm reading. It outshines almost anything the big two are doing. I was reading this in the middle of doing some X-Men content. I was doing some reviews on books for, I think it was like X-Force and New Mutants. And I was reading X-Men number 2 and Fallen Angels. And, I'm hearing word about people talking, these books are so amazing and they're so good. And then I was reading these books and I was like, these books put those to shame. Jeff Lemire's writing is like a clinic. And it's everything these books aren't. Justin Nguyen's art is so befitting the story, and it's consistent. You aren't going to get a different artist, 6 issues later, and now it's going to go on to someone else. This team is there to the end, and this series is going to be about 30-ish plus issues, like Descender was 32 issues. So bear that in mind. It's a good, long, ongoing series that's going to run a couple of years, give you a fun story, and keep you engaged. But because it's only monthly, $3.99 monthly, and there'll probably be even some hiatuses there, which is typical for indie books, and that's great. Your pocketbook doesn't have to, feel the pain. And I'm telling you, I read this book and it sets me in a perspective of what a good book is and why I shouldn't be tolerating the miserable crap that the big two are publishing. And I'd say that with, believe me, I'm a big fan of the big two. I want my Marvel and DC to be great, and some of the books are. And I mention that when I talk about them. There's some good stuff, but there's almost nothing that's on the same level as Ascender. And I hope you can enjoy it. I can't really do reviews of this book all the time like I do of the other books. Number one, because there's not enough really interest in the book, sadly. And number two, this is a long, ongoing saga. It's not the type of book you're just going to pick up on issue 7 and just go like normal, traditional, mainstream comics. You want to start at issue 1. It's more like manga style. You always want to start on issue 1. It's a long story. And fortunately, Image Comics has made it affordable with their trade paperbacks being $10 to jump in. You can do that here. You can buy that. You can pick up issue 6 is on the stands right now. Or if you fall in love with this book, you should be able to get issues 1 through 5. Very simple. I don't believe this is a hot commodity, and you don't have a lot of issues to buy and collect this book. You will be proud to have it. You'll be proud to read it. The storyline is amazing. If you don't like it, I'm be shocked. But I do understand that not everyone likes, coffee. Not everyone likes tea. We all have different tastes. So I'm babbling, which is I'm known to do. So I'm going to wrap this up. But if you are reading this, please let me know. Talk to me about it. Tell me if you're as big a fan of it as I am. I can't wait till the next book comes out. Thank you so much for watching this and hearing my opinions. Like I said, I just want to promote this book because it's that good. Thanks for watching.